Welcome to Season 2 of Healing the Tigress, a podcast of conversations and stories on Asian American Pacific Islander maternal mental health. We are your hosts, Peggy, a perinatal mental health therapist,
and Jasmine, a clinical pharmacist who is perinatal mental health certified. As Taiwanese American mothers who lived through postpartum depression and anxiety, we felt like we didn't hear about other AAPI mothers struggling with their mental health in new motherhood. But we knew it couldn't just be us.
So we created this podcast because we hope that sharing these stories can start to break the stigma of mental health in our community and help heal the inner tigress in all AAPI parents. Welcome back to another episode of Healing the Tigress. We always love making sure that every motherhood journey story is represented here on our podcast. And today's guest story is one that not only tugs at our heartstrings, but is definitely one that is often underrepresented in motherhood circles. Today's story touches on themes of biracial identity, navigating fertility as queer mamas, and raising a multicultural child within a diverse family.
Our guest is Elise Ruiz-Hom, who was born and raised in Oahu, Hawaii, and currently lives in Portland, Oregon, with her wife and son. Elise has a BA in Child and Family Studies from Portland State University and has worked in social services for the last 10 years. Elise, we are so excited to have you share you and your wife's motherhood story with our listeners. And we would love if you share a little bit about yourself, your own cultural background, and how you started on your motherhood journey.
Yeah, thank you. So like you said, I'm from Oahu, Hawaii. I was born and raised there. My dad and his side of the family are Chinese, and my dad is first generation, so my grandparents immigrated from China. And then my mom is originally from DC with her kind of family roots up and down the East Coast. And so I am half Chinese and half white, quarter German, quarter Hungarian Jewish. And I currently live in Portland here with my wife Lydia, our son Chaves, and our 2 dogs and 2 cats that were definitely part of the fertility journey, attaining all of our fur babies during that time. But yeah, I think growing up in Hawaii as a biracial person in Hawaii, it's often referred to as Hapa, so I'll call myself like Hapa Chinese. Hawaii is unique, right? In that like white folks are the minority, and so grow up with like a lot of pride in being Chinese, a lot of pride in being Asian, and especially with my grandmother, we called her Yin Yin. I think the word is supposed to be something else, but my dad said they like made it easier for us or something. So we called her Yin Yin, and then our Ye was there too. And they were just really the core of our family. There would be family lunches like every Sunday. Grew up super close to all my cousins because the whole of my dad's family was there except for my auntie. But we still, even my auntie's kids, we're all super close to this day. So strong emphasis on family, strong emphasis on culture. And then Hawaii is also unique in that like in elementary school, even like you grow up just like with Hawaiian culture embedded and all kinds of Asian and Pacific Islander cultures just in the school curriculum, which was like super, super awesome and unique. So that all affected my worldview, my appreciation for like other cultures, appreciation for family, and the foundation that is in my life. A lot of emphasis, especially on being Chinese. I think, a lot of Chinese people are very proud, especially our Chinese fathers are very proud to be Chinese. And so that was very instilled in us. Like the things that were positive, like positive traits about us were often attributed to like being Chinese or like our work ethic or family values, things like that. I grew up with that just being like the core of my life. We would go to Chinatown for Chinese New Year to watch the lion dances like outside the shops with the fireworks, and just a ton of traditions that we learned from my Yin Yin and Ye about how to care for each other, like how to prepare food. I think that's really kind of the foundation of my biracial identity and where I come from.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think we're really always trying to capture the stories of all across our AAPI diaspora. We've had another guest who's like, what was she? Like a quarter Korean,
Mm-hmm.
right? And yet she was like very Asian passing.
Yeah.
And I know that you've talked about what it's like being very white passing.
Yes, yeah.
Growing up in Hawaii as well. Could you tell us a little bit about how you and your wife started your motherhood journey?
Yeah, so Lydia and I initially got together in like right at the end of 2010 and um, got married in 2015. And it kind of just seemed like the natural next step. So when we decided that we wanted to start trying, and at that point we were together about 7 years total, and with Lydia being 3 years older than me, we decided that she would try first. We did some research and knew that artificial insemination, IUI, was typically how couples like us who were pursuing being moms would go about this and who were willing to carry. And so with our insurance, they ordered a bunch of fertility labs. It's kind of interesting to note that like you have to be sent to infertility services to get these treatments, even though like there was nothing with infertility happening at the time. You just get sent there because this is where they do the IUIs. And everything for Lydia came back normal. We were approved for 6 IUIs. Usually they tell hetero couples, right, to try for like a whole year before they seek fertility treatments. So the initial 6 was just given to us as like a starting point, since obviously we couldn't try naturally for a year. So once we were approved for that, we started looking for donors. For me, it was like important for the donor to be of the same like ethnic background as me. And in looking for this type of donor, it proved to be pretty hard because there's a ton of like full Chinese donors out there, but there were very, very few Hapa donors. Even like Hapa Asian, anything like Hapa Japanese, Hapa Filipino. There's some folks that were like a quarter or, like I said, full, but finding these donors who were half Asian proved to be hard. And I kind of had to sift through about why this was so important for me. And I think like it has to do just with how I know to relate to myself as like being Chinese and being Asian, and how I relate to others as Asian and Chinese. I feel like there would be kind of like a disconnect if I were to try to instill those values in my child and they weren't Chinese. But also like I have worked with underprivileged youth for the last 10 years. I've worked with homeless and runaway youth. I've worked with high behavioral health needs, foster youth. And so I know also that like it's not biology that makes a family. Like I've seen all of these youth create their own communities and have just as strong, if not stronger, bonds with their chosen family. And so luckily we did find a couple of biracial donors. There were a couple that we used that ended up not being biracial, but had some kind of Asian mix. That was a journey in and of itself. We went forward with the IUIs for Lydia. We were very lucky to have some significant financial help from my family, because I know that this is a privilege to be able to attempt to have a biological child as a queer couple. And so we were very lucky in that sense. Donor samples were at the time $1,000 per vial, and then with the IUI procedure, it would be about $1,300 per attempt. Just wanted to acknowledge that you know we are here because we have that privilege, that financial privilege of being able to pursue that. And so for 2 years, 2017 to 2019, Lydia attempted 8 IUIs. After the initial 6 not taking, they just kept telling us it's really just luck. Like 1 out of 4 makes it. And you just got to keep trying sometimes. And since hetero couples are encouraged to try for a year, they gave us another 6 to make 12 tries, 12 months of trying. After the 8 IUIs did not take, none of them took it all, we decided to look into IVF in 2019 because we had heard that has a higher chance of success. We met with doctors at the IVF clinic and they were ready to work with us. And right when we were about to start IVF, that's when COVID hit, when Lydia was due, like right for her first cycle. with starting IVF and her being at home full-time, working at home full-time, we were glad that she was going to have the space to be able to go through all the hormones and everything at home instead of having to worry about taking sick time all the time or having to deal with work stuff in the process. So that kind of fed our excitement for the IVF process. We were very, very excited. The doctors said they looked at her labs. Again, nothing was wrong. It should be a fairly typical procedure. And then we started. It's hard for me to talk about this part because of the pain I had to watch her endure to try and to have a baby, especially with what we know now about some of her fertility issues. There's still a lot of grief and a lot of like unresolved resentment, I think, I hold about this time. Lydia went through 3 IVF cycles with at least 100 shots of needles going into her thighs, her hind area, just taking all the kinds of pills. She had 3 egg retrievals, one of which she was awake for and experienced some significant physical trauma as a result, and then 6 embryo transfers. The first transfer actually took, and we were super excited. It's the first time we ever saw the positive pregnancy test. Super, super great moment for both of us. And unfortunately, that one ended with a miscarriage at about 6 weeks. There was another one that ended with a miscarriage at 8 weeks. And then there was one that was a chemical pregnancy. So during this process, the doctors did find a mild underlying condition that could have been contributing to the pregnancies not sticking. They treated it just with like a shot called Lupron, which also gave Lydia really intense migraines, and then some antibiotics, and said that would take care of it. And they continued to tell us it is still just up to chance sometimes. So in 2022, after 5 years of trying with no baby to show for it, and with Lydia's last egg retrieval, we only got like 1 embryo from that cycle, and that ended up not taking. It was super upsetting just seeing how much physical and mental and emotional stress Lydia had gone through. She gives 110% in like every single thing that she does and every single thing that she feels and thinks. And it seemed like if we kept persevering, we'd be able to have a baby. Like that's like the messaging that we got is like, just keep trying. And then all the like 2-week waits and the disappointments following all of those 2-week waits was just seriously draining. It just totally messes with your mind and your emotions, the entire process of wanting to hope but not being able to hope, but just going back and forth on just ping-ponging through emotions, really. And it was right around that time actually we got our golden retriever puppy. that was kind of our consolation puppy, and she's been a joy. It was great to bring her into the family. But we decided I would try next. I had mixed feelings about this because I was upset at not being able to have a child that like was not biologically Lydia's. I think like anytime, I guess not for everybody, but like I was excited to have a child that I could see Lydia's features, like her big beautiful eyes or her curly hair. And this was more of like a thought in the back of my mind because obviously having a family with her in whatever way we could was the main point. But that's definitely part of the grieving process, is knowing that dream kind of had to be put to bed. Finding a donor for me was also a process because there are a lot of Mexican donors. Lydia is full Mexican, but she is a very fair Mexican with curly hair, big, beautiful eyes. And so finding somebody that had similar physical traits to her was also hard. We ended up finding a donor that was both similar to Lydia and I in physical traits, and we thought that was going to work. So in April 2023, I started IUIs, and then on my second IUI, I became pregnant. I am really bad at the 2-week wait, and so I tested on like day 12 or something at like 4 a.m. because it's supposed to be your first morning urine or whatever. I was like, it's 4 a.m. It's probably close enough to being FMU. So we got the positive test. We were definitely initially happy, but like 5 minutes later I was definitely in tears, fighting again those mixed emotions of it just feels so unfair that it was so easy for me, and knowing that Lydia tried like so hard and wasn't able to like even get pregnant with IUIs. And Lydia assured me from the very beginning, even before we started, that she didn't want her experience to inform mine in any way emotionally. Like, she knew that I was going to have my own experience and things like that. And she didn't want me to feel guilty. She didn't want me to feel bad. So she was very obviously supportive, but we would process those feelings together, carried through the first 2 trimesters of processing these emotions. And we just had to tell each other, like, we just have to check in and be honest about what our emotions are. Like, even if it's like, yeah, I feel really resentful today or something like that. And we knew that there would continue to be a lot to process throughout my pregnancy. She obviously continued to tell me that she didn't harbor any resentment or anything because she would never want me to go through what she went through. She wouldn't want anybody to have to go through like what she went through. And all she wanted was for me and the baby to be healthy and happy. And so I also wanted to be there, but it was harder for me to get there for sure. I'd have also had a fairly mild pregnancy, which added to the mixed emotions because it was like a really easy pregnancy. Like, I didn't experience a lot of sickness. I had a mild case of gestational diabetes. I even lost weight in my pregnancy, probably because of the gestational diabetes. And we live 5 minutes from a Cinnabon. Like, I would have hit that up every day if that was not the case. But yeah, all of that contributed to the mixed feelings. Lydia would always say that, like, the universe owes us one. This is something for us to be happy about. It owes us to have something happen easily. And it was hard to talk to our families about it, or my family, because everybody was very excited. But I think we didn't allow ourselves to be excited until 24th week, which is like technically the week of viability, until I knew that there was going to be, if something happened, they could get him out of me and, possibly have some kind of fighting chance at survival. But we got there. Chaves was induced. It was a special moment because the day he was born was also the day that Lydia's grandfather was born, who Chaves shares a middle name with. And so it was kind of nice to have that nice line through everything. Even labor was like fairly easy. Like, I had a couple failed epidurals, but it finally kicked in when I had to push, and my entire labor was like 9 hours. And so during labor, Lydia was like the absolute best partner. Having her in there with me, she could kind of intuit things that I would need even without me verbalizing them, and being able to go talk to the nurse, and then the nurse bringing the appropriate teams in to help us out. She was right there with me in every single push. And then when he arrived, healthy and whole, we were very overjoyed. Breastfeeding came very easily. I had a very high supply. He latched very easily, which I know, in the groups that I've been in, that is not the norm necessarily. And so I felt super lucky to have an abundant supply and a very efficient nurser.
I feel like Lydia's right that the universe kind of owed you guys something
right.
easy, because I'm hearing all of this, and it's this big roller coaster of waiting and hoping, and especially how you had to endure watching Lydia go through so many cycles of IUI, of IVF, and I think you said this was over the span of 5 years, right? That it took until you tried.
Right.
And so, yeah, it almost did seem like something had to give. Maybe we paid our dues, and now finally we have this healthy baby boy here.
Totally.
And I'm hearing your story, right? It's a different side than we had another episode with a gay couple. And so that episode was with Henry too earlier this season. And they talked about what it was like to try and conceive and have children. Obviously, it's harder. It's a different process for them, right? Because they cannot physically carry the baby. So it was IVF and surrogacy. So a lot of it is money, time, effort, all these emotions that are tied to holding your breath. Can we even be happy? Can we even let ourselves feel that hope or joy? Because you guys also endured miscarriages, right? This just, and I think they did as well with one of their surrogates. So I'm kind of curious though, on the back end, the story, for you and your wife, how, you're going to invest so much of this time and money and emotion. How did you both know that you wanted to have children? And how did you both decide on the route to pursue it?
I think we both grew up with young children around us in our families, young cousins, in her case, young siblings, and always enjoyed the presence of children and babies and spending time together among those young ones too. And we felt like it was the natural next step in our relationship and our journey together. And we decided to pursue it this way, I think, because we were both willing to attempt to carry, and this was the way that we would do that. So it was, yeah, kind of just more of like a logical decision on this is how it happens. Let's give it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if also with your 10 years of working in social services and child development, where it's like also like adoption could have been an option as well for many LGBT couples, but also being like, I want my own biological. And I think that's a theme that I was really picking up on the story too, which was really touching to me, of not just wanting to find a Chinese donor, because when someone is biracial, you're not really like just half this or half that. You're both of those, both your mom and your dad's identities, and being able to represent that. Like, even though I feel like the Chinese influence was maybe much stronger, especially growing up in Hawaii, but also like, but I'm also white, right? Like these things that you really want to have in your child. You don't want to erase a whole side of your heritage. And just even the battle of finding that. And I always hear this a lot from folks in Hawaii too. Just the Hapa identity is also really in itself really important. And then also it's interesting because this part of you that really wanted to include your heritage. And if Lydia was going to carry and do IUI, then the child would obviously be half Mexican.
Yeah.
And then when it's flipped, when it's like, okay, it's now our child will ensure to be I'm terrible at math, a quarter Chinese and a quarter white, right? Yeah. Or whatever the mix is with the donor. There's that grief of not having Lydia's curly hair. She does have amazing hair. Her curly hair, her big beautiful eyes, and that grieving process, I think, is really something that a lot of LGBTQ parents are wrestling with when they have to go through this route of conceiving. You don't always get a guarantee that your child will share your biology.
Sure.
And then I love that piece of like, you embrace that biology doesn't make a family.
Mm-hmm. I think too, what I wanted to say about that was, when we were continuing to try, we would get a lot of comments sometimes from people like, why don't you just adopt? And that statement is so loaded. It's like, having worked with foster youth, with runaway homeless youth, like adding a just to adoption is like really undermines the whole process. I think like it's a choice to adopt. Like, these kids aren't like stand-ins for biological children by any means, and like having a slight to that whole population of folks. But also I feel like folks don't really jump to that conclusion as quickly with straight couples. I think people really want the straight couple to get that biological child, but for some reason when it comes to queer couples, it's easier to just say like, well, there's like all these other ways you can do it. And so having to deal with those kinds of comments was rough, and having to reiterate saying that's not what we want to do, and having that be enough.
Yeah. And modern science is so amazing. Queer couples can have biological children. We see it with Henry, and they're twins. They have twins. And also we had another episode about adoption, and that's not like, you're right. It's not just adoption. It is not easy. None of these are easy. I think the choice of motherhood, parenthood in general, no path of it, whether you're, cisgender, straight, gay, choosing to become a parent, all of those choices are hard. But I do see that there is this extra layer of financially, you mentioned the privilege of having the support of your family to be able to pay for all of the treatments. Definitely. And also the support, not just financial support, but just the support in general from both your families of being there for you both as you embark on this journey. I think it is something that folks, I think, take for granted often.
For sure. Yeah.
I'm curious, when you were going through the IUI yourself, I know you had watched your wife go through so many of it. What was it like for you? I know you mentioned a little bit of feeling guilt. How was it physically? How was it mentally going through that?
I think like we did feel definitely some excitement. I felt a little bit of excitement. I've never been someone that's like, I really want to try and get pregnant. Like I've never been like stoked on pregnancy. I think in my life, to me, it was just, oh yeah, I have the ability to potentially do this. So, logically I'll give it a shot. There was some excitement and like a little bit of unknown, right? Like not knowing, like if this could work easily for me and for us. And also not knowing how I was going to feel if it was easy for me and if it was easy for us in this way. Just a ton of mixed emotions around obviously wanting it to work, wanting to have a healthy baby at the end of it, but just carrying kind of all of the experience of the last 5 years at that point into the experience of me trying to get pregnant too. So yeah, super complicated, and just really had to try and feel the grief when there was grief and feel happy when you were happy and not try to control or not feel a certain way like that. All of that was just super exhausting, and we knew that we just had to feel what we were feeling in the moment, and just whatever we feel in the future will be that feeling too. Like just kind of take it as it comes.
I think what's so heartbreaking about the journey for both of you, right, is Lydia goes first, your wife goes first, and she's years of trying IUI, IVF, and then only later discovering that she had late diagnosed endometriosis. And that's what made the fertility journey so difficult for her. And that if only the doctors had listened to Lydia's request for an MRI or to look into this more of why they kept being like, oh, yeah, just keep trying. Maybe the pain and heartache could have been avoided. And I'm curious how much you think not only being women of color, but also queer, played a role in being dismissed when advocating for medical procedures.
Yeah, I think it plays a big part in that, like, as queer women, you're entering this space of such a specialized field with all of these experts and all of these clinicians that supposedly know all of the most recent research. At one point, there was someone on our team who was like actively researching recurrent loss in pregnancy. You kind of come into this world and knowing that there's not a lot of new things that we know, like they're the experts. I think as minority women in that space, I'm hesitant to try and to contradict or to advocate, because like supposedly they know all of the things and they know what would be best for you, and not to challenge that. I also think a lot of it is just the lack of research into women's health issues, especially fertility issues. Endometriosis, adenomyosis, like is just severely under-researched and is just a woman's problem. And Lydia's was suspected to have it just from when she was young, from having really, really painful cycles every month. And at one point, like, we asked, like, can't an MRI, is there some kind of imaging where you can see? And they said, well, we could, but that doesn't work all the time. And so we were, of course, then like, okay, well, if it's not going to work all the time, then maybe we won't do it. But recently, Lydia talked with her doctor again. They said, let's just do an MRI and see what's going on in there. And lo and behold, you could see everything. It was deep infiltrating adenomyosis, endometriosis, and the endometriosis doctor that she's working with now was like, yeah, I would not recommend you try to get pregnant. That was super, super frustrating, more for Lydia, obviously, than for me, just knowing that, like, we spent 7 years and had somebody just tried the one thing that might work in this situation, we would have been much more informed. And so I think the not pushing the experts, not not wanting to advocate too hard in this space that's very specialized. It definitely might have played into that. And then they're a business, right? Like they're making money off of people wanting babies. So
Right.
it's hard to, I wish we had trusted our gut like a little bit more in that space.
Oh, that breaks my heart, because like what you're saying also about a lot of this underfunded women's health problems. I've been listening to other podcasts and sources too talk about how just even OB-GYNs get paid so much less than like orthopedic surgeons or neurosurgeons. And it's not that they get less specialized training or anything like that, but it's really just follow the money, right? Like where do we
Exactly.
place value on getting reimbursements, right? And it's one lump sum pot. And so if you place more, you give more to the orthopedics, then you got to give less to the OB-GYNs and the women's health things. But it also just kind of shows like we're not valuing treating women and kids. I think pediatrics is another one that gets less of the pot.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but like these are real issues that we don't have a lot of answers for sometimes and treatment for, because there really is no research and treatment for these kinds of things, which really sucks. You're just living in a lot of pain.
Mm-hmm.
And some people I've heard have said that like who've had endometriosis and then go on to have kids say like labor was like nothing compared to the pain that they experience from an endometriosis flare-up. And you know how hard, as moms or all of ourselves, how hard that was pushing a baby out. So I can only imagine, like, can't imagine how much more pain that has to be to go through that. So I'm sorry that you guys didn't get that diagnosis earlier.
Yeah,
even
for sure.
Just not enough resources and information, and even like as a person who needs to advocate for yourself, like not even knowing what questions to ask or like what to advocate for. That's got to be really hard. And I'm hearing also those layers of your identity also being like, maybe we just shouldn't.
Yeah.
Right. It's hard to find that balance. Like sometimes it's like, maybe I need to push harder because I am. And other times it's like, well, let me not rock the boat.
Sure.
Right. It's hard. And then now I'm thinking also then on the postpartum side, we learned a lot in our PMHC studies that infertility can sometimes be a risk factor for developing things like postpartum depression or anxiety. So after giving birth, I think you shared with us in your pre-interview that there was some initial anxiety and maybe like a hormone crash in the beginning, but it seems like your mental health held up, thankfully, afterwards, despite having some of these risk factors. So what do you think helped you get through these initial maybe baby blues?
I think having to deal with so many emotions on this entire journey, we had to find a way to allow ourselves to feel the different emotions. And I think we learned somewhere in year 4 or 5, trying to not feel hopeful or not feel this and that is not helpful. Like it's going to be there either way, and it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change the outcome. Like it's either way it's going to be happy, or either way it's just going to be a crap situation. So I think learning how to deal with that together and to talk openly about what we're feeling was really helpful to contribute to my like mental wellness after the hormone crash and things like that. Like even when I had the hormone crash, I just felt off, and Lydia's much better at like verbalizing her emotions than I am. So she knows that when I tell her like, hey, I feel unsettled, like if I finally am able to recognize that I'm at that point and I can verbalize that, she knows that like I need to check in. And at that point, that was maybe like 2 or 3 weeks postpartum. And luckily my mom and stepdad were here, and we kind of just handed Chaves off to them. And I went upstairs with Lydia and just like cried for 20 minutes and just like wanted to feel normal. Like nothing felt normal anymore. Every single night was different in terms of how Chaves was sleeping and the feeding. And nobody tells you that like your nipples are going to be so sore from breastfeeding. Like they tell you, yeah, you're going to feel some pain but it shouldn't hurt. And so it's like, so what is exactly the line here? It's like, is it gonna hurt? Yes, okay, but it shouldn't hurt. It was really, yeah. There's so much going into that. And Lydia just telling me that none of this it's not supposed to be normal, that the fact that it's abnormal is normal, just kind of talking me through it. So I think learning early on, obviously, we were not as great as managing our emotions. I think we definitely had to come to a point where we told each other, like, we have to check in, we have to talk, we have to get all this stuff out. Mostly for me, because like I said, it's hard for me to verbalize the things I feel. I think having that foundation, having just been like really, really good friends before we got together, having that partnership and that companionship really, really helped during that time.
Yeah. Did you mention that your mom or your dad were there to help out in postpartum?
My mom and stepdad, yeah. They were here. They got here, I think, like the day before I was induced, and then they stayed for 3 weeks.
Wow. Did you guys do any of that, the postpartum traditions that, and actually I guess your mom wouldn't know the Chinese traditions then.
Yeah.
Had you learned about any of that from your dad or had thought about doing any of that?
No, my dad and his brothers are definitely like very American, very like Hawaii born Chinese guys. Like they dropped out of Chinese school at like 2 years in. My auntie was the only one who went all the way through. But yeah, that I think a lot of the language and stuff like that was really held with my yin yin. Even my yeye had spent 10, 15 years in California before he brought my yin yin to Hawaii. So he was more Americanized than my yin yin. So yeah, no, she never talked to us about like post-birth kind of stuff.
Okay.
As most grandparents do, right?
Yeah.
No one tells you anything until it happens. You're like, whoa.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. I do love that a huge part of what really helped you through those initial baby blues is the strength of your relationship with Lydia. Because I see this all the time with a lot of my clients. I'm always assessing for like, what is your partnership like?
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned like you guys were friends for a very long time before you guys got together. And it really makes a huge difference. A supportive partner can be really helpful. And again, you can still have the most supportive partner and still develop perinatal mental health disorders. But I think like getting through it with such a supportive partner is humongous. And being able to be communicative and open and being like, look, I these are my needs. And it's that same theme of like advocating for yourself and speaking up about like, I need to check in. We need to check in. And I think that is such a gift to have such a strong relationship going into something like this. And also having gone through what you both went through even before you got pregnant, and how like seeing each other through that probably also continued to strengthen what really is such a strong relationship.
Definitely. Yeah.
Well, now it's a year-ish or more later since little Chavi's been born, and you have a beautiful, healthy baby boy, like the cutest. I think I just saw Lydia post this adorable picture of him, like standing in those like baby toddler things, like little charmy face. And you both are just such beautiful mothers together. What is something you learned most about yourself, your marriage, maybe even Lydia, through this journey to motherhood?
I think something I didn't expect was that I'm a little bit more of a hoverer than I expected to be. I think I definitely had to be able to step back a little bit. I'm very much somebody who like I see a need and I'm jumping in and I'm doing it. If Chaves was like fussing with Lydia, remembering that she can tell me if she needs help. Like I don't need to jump in right away. I think learning also that I still have a lot to work on in terms of my mental health and my therapy. We both go to therapy regularly. Because like I have this, I think I just have kind of like this mental blocker. I have a hard time coming to terms with the fact that we are Chavi's like entire world. Like knowing that like I'm gonna say things and do things that affect him in such a big way. I find myself sometimes trying to maybe create that distance so that I don't disappoint him. I'm trying to learn to work through that a little bit, that it's okay that I'm going to be this kid's rock in some ways for a little while, and what that means about myself and my own self-worth, things like that. Things I definitely didn't think about before, about what it means to be the center of somebody's world as a parent. Yeah, that's all brand new to me still.
And you guys have a beautiful, multiracial baby. I'd love to hear more about how you have been just instilling the different cultures of your heritage, and teaching Chaves about them.
Yeah, well, Lydia's entire family is here in Oregon with us. When I am in office 1 day a week, her parents actually live like 3 blocks away from my office, so he spends the day there, and they speak primarily Spanish to him all day. We kind of go between Spanish and English when we're talking to him. I'm like a very beginner speaker in Spanish, but Lydia is obviously fluent, and so working the language definitely into raising him. I haven't like found like a solid like Asian community by any means up here, but we have a rec center not too far from here that had a Lunar New Year celebration, and so we made sure to take him to that. They had the lion dance and a bunch of other cultural displays. We didn't bring like any earmuffs for him, and we sat in like the front row. And the lady came up and tapped Lydia on the shoulder. She was like, "It's gonna be loud," and we were like, "I know." And we just kind of smashed our hands on his ears the entire time. But he like didn't fight it. I think he liked it a lot. Just introducing different cultural foods to him. His first food was poi. We really wanted him to have that as his first food because just of the nutritional aspects of that, but also just honoring that cultural influence that I have. Obviously, I'm not native Hawaiian or anything like that, but that worldview and that everything that we learned as kids about the culture, the gods, the food, the traditions, very, very instilled in me. And so poi was his first food. We tried to expose him to a lot of different kinds of Asian foods and Mexican foods, and music. Obviously, we play a lot of music together, Hawaiian music and Mexican artists too. There's been a lot of Bad Bunny playing in our house recently with his newest album. So just trying to remember those cultures. My mom, on her side, they have these cookies called sand tarts that they make at Christmas every year. They're just like these really thin, crispy, sweet cookies that her grandmother made with her. And so I'm trying to make that with him as well. Just trying to also tell him stories. None of our grandparents are alive anymore, unfortunately. And so telling him stories about them and about their lives and things we want him to know about them, to pass on kind of that legacy and that heritage.
I think that's so beautiful to weave all of that together and to be able to have like little snippets of here and there, and that shapes who you are, which I think is really, really special. So
Definitely.
He's going to have a really cool childhood growing up, and it's going to be amazing.
He's going to eat so much good food.
I know.
He has, yeah.
If there are any LGBTQ mamas out there listening and they're about to go on to a fertility journey, or they're looking into motherhood, what advice would you give to these mamas?
The first thing that came to mind was get your labs done and have as much information as you can going into it. Ask for the imaging, ask for the blood work, ask for it all. Because it's so expensive, you want to be armed with as much information as possible. Like I mentioned earlier too, like these are businesses that want your money, and they're making money off of a desire for children. So trust your gut. If you feel like even there's an inkling of something that you should ask for, just ask for it and get it done. It's your money. It's your insurance. You have control over that. And to build a community with people who have gone through it, because nobody gets it. Like with the IVF stuff and any kind of losses, like nobody gets it unless they've been through it. And to be able to talk to people who know exactly what you're going through with the 2-week wait, or exactly what you're going through with not wanting to hope, but wanting to hope, and all of that is just super, super helpful. So building that community is also super important.
Yeah. Would you say like the easiest way to do that is, I don't know, Facebook groups, social
Definitely,
media?
yeah. We found a couple of Facebook groups of queer folks going through fertility processes and just getting on there to vent, to support each other. So I think I've tried to look like for meetups or something like that, but it's just harder to do that. Definitely online, there's a big community to support.
And I think I remember when Lydia was going through a lot of the miscarriages and losses that I may have reached out to both of you and sent you some resources for Return to Zero. They actually had like an LGBTQ support group. And I think I remember you mentioning that you both maybe checked it out. So
definitely,
loss can be a part of the fertility journey, and knowing that there are resources specifically for LGBTQ parents, because there are very unique struggles that maybe hetero families are not necessarily going through. And so I do remember like that being a resource available.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you for that. That was, it was definitely nice to actually talk to people who were going through it. And especially with I think with the queer aspect, we got like a lot of nods and things like that when we would talk about like, people saying to just adopt, kind of some of the platitudes, everything happens for a reason, and all that kind of stuff. Being able to see those reactions on people's faces, knowing that they get it, was super helpful. So yeah, thank you for that resource.
Mm-hmm. We ask all of our guests at the end of the episode a specific question to tie back to how we are all healing our inner tigress. And while you may not have experienced postpartum depression or a very severe perinatal mental health disorder, we love asking our guests just kind of to look back at maybe the most difficult time during their journey, what they would tell themselves now, whether that's when you were having your hormone dips and having some baby blues and the 20 minutes of crying with Lydia, or maybe it was even watching Lydia go through all of that pain. What's something you would tell yourself back then?
I would tell past Elise to try to find some resources around partners who are supporting somebody going through IVF, or to create that space, because there wasn't a lot of those resources. I think it's a very unique experience to be the partner in that situation. So telling her to seek out those resources, but to also know that there's no way to fix it, and to just be there for myself, be there for Lydia, and know that there are lots of people who love us and will take care of us.
Those are really great words. And if you are willing to be a resource for someone, or if anyone wants to connect with you, what are some ways, or the best way that people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, I am on Instagram. My handle is juxtapose53. This is my handle I chose back in 2009 or whatever it was that I never changed. Juxtapose53 on Instagram, and yeah, people can message me. It is a private profile, but people feel free to message me, and happy to connect.
Thank you so much for being on our podcast, for sharing your story, because I know there are listeners who may be going through something similar. It's so nice to see you on this other side of it. I know we reached out to you a while back when you were like freshly pregnant and wondering where you would be when we finally get to share your story. And we just feel very honored and privileged to be able to be the space to share your story. So thank you so much for sharing it today. And we will, of course, include any other resource links and information in our show notes for our guests. And again, this is not something we want people to experience going through alone. So know that you don't have to, and that there are resources and support and community.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for the space to share. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Healing the Tigress. The more we share these stories, the more we can help other AAPI mothers and partners. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to keep supporting this mission, please hit the subscribe button to the show and take a few seconds to leave a rating. An extra big thanks if you would also leave a review to boost our show visibility and help other AAPI folks find us.
You can also follow us on Instagram at Healing the Tigress, or even better, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Healing the Tigress podcast to support us more. Inside the Patreon, we will be offering more bonus episodes, sneak peeks, and a community for you to help shape our podcast too. Thanks for being here.
Healing the Tigress is produced and edited by Peggy and Jasmine.
Music for this show is remixed by Dr. Tony Huynh of Tony Mixes.
Our intro music is a cover of You and Me by Z Avi, played by our co-host Peggy.
Our outro music is a cover of Green Island Serenade, played by Jasmine's sister.
Cover art design is by Dr. Angela Chung.